Picture this. You're flying through a perfectly clear blue sky, or maybe you're sailing a massive, luxurious ocean liner across a freezing, completely calm sea. And then, suddenly, everything goes wrong. Today, we're going to dive deep into the terrifying reality of vanishing at sea and this explainer. Think of this as a lecture, where we'll put two of history's absolute most famous maritime case studies side by side. You see, throughout history, there's always been this profound, almost inevitable tension between our human ambition to explore the globe and the sheer unstoppable power of open water. Whether it's through invisible forces that seemingly swallow entire ships whole, or physical leviathans of ice just waiting in the dark, the ocean has a highly effective and terrifying way of reminding us exactly who's in charge. Here is the syllabus for today's lecture. First, we'll introduce our two ultimate mysteries. Then, we'll dive into our case studies on the Bermuda Triangle and the RMS Titanic. After that, we'll compare the two tragedies side by side, and finally, we'll wrap up by exploring the enduring lessons they leave behind.
All right, let's jump right into Section 1, Two Ultimate Mysteries, looking at the ocean as a truly unconquerable force.
Moving right along to Section 2, our first case study, the Bermuda Triangle, a study in myth and natural forces. For decades, the Bermuda Triangle has absolutely captivated our imaginations, really blurring the lines between myth and natural phenomena. It builds this fascinating narrative of invisible dangers and entirely missing evidence. But before we get into all those wild stories of vanishings, it's incredibly important that we ground ourselves in the actual geography. The Bermuda Triangle is literally just an imaginary region in the western Atlantic Ocean. You draw a line connecting Bermuda to Miami, Florida, down to San Juan, Puerto Rico, and back up. That's it. 500,000. That is the massive number of square miles this area covers. We absolutely have to emphasize this scale to really understand the mystery. It is a vast, chaotic region. Now, every single year, thousands of ships and aircraft travel through this area perfectly safely. But it's exactly this immense, sprawling size that allows the ocean to hide its secrets so effectively when things do go wrong. And it's that shocking lack of wreckage that quickly fueled the legend. Let's look at the timeline. Back in 1918, the massive USS Cyclops disappears with over 300 people on board. The weather was normal, there were absolutely no distress calls, they were just gone. Then, fast forward to 1945, Flight 19, which was a group of 5 Navy bombers, vanishes after their compasses randomly fail. And tragically, just hours later, the rescue plane carrying 13 crew members that was sent to find them, it also vanishes without a single trace. So, what is going on here? Well, because there was zero physical evidence left behind, human imagination just completely took over. People started asking crazy questions. Are ships literally falling into an interdimensional portal that alters space and time? Are we talking about extraterrestrial spacecraft abducting planes? Or, my personal favorite, what about the lost city of Atlantis and its ancient energy crystals somehow interfering with navigation? These unproven, straight-out-of sci-fi concepts show just how desperate we are for answers when the hard evidence simply isn't there. But let's bring it back down to Earth, because the crucial point here is that grounded scientific facts perfectly explain why debris is never found. We really don't need aliens. The realities are powerful, rapid storms and hurricanes that can catch even experienced navigators completely off guard. Then you have the fast-moving Gulf Stream current. Think of it like a massive underwater conveyor belt that quickly scatters any sinking debris across thousands of miles. Add in normal human navigation errors and magnetic variation confusing compasses, and the grand mystery suddenly becomes a tragic but entirely natural reality. Okay, let's turn to Section 3, our second case study, the RMS Titanic, a study in hubris and tangible disaster. Now we're shifting gears. We are moving away from a mystery born of missing evidence to a highly documented tragedy born of just way too much confidence. Built by the White Star Line in 1912, this ship was the largest moving object ever created by humans at the time. At nearly 900 feet long, it was a total marvel of technology. Newspapers literally called it unsinkable. And that label, it perfectly highlights the sheer ambition, the extreme luxury, and frankly, the technological arrogance that completely blinded its creators to the realities of nature. They truly, genuinely believed mankind had conquered the ocean. Looking at how this played out, it's a grim, practically unstoppable countdown to disaster. On April 10, 1912, the Titanic departs Southampton. By April 14, multiple ice warnings from nearby ships are just completely ignored, as the ship speeds through the dark, unusually calm waters.
At 11:40 p.m., the lookout screams, "Iceberg right ahead," and the ship strikes. And then, by 2:20 a.m., this so-called unsinkable marvel of engineering sinks directly into the freezing Atlantic.
And here is where it gets truly horrifying. It perfectly illustrates the fatal prioritization of luxury over human life. The Titanic absolutely did not have enough lifeboats for everyone on board. Why? Simply because the designers thought too many lifeboats would ruin the appearance of the first-class luxury deck. They had enough for only about half the people on board. And to make matters worse, in the sheer chaotic panic of the disaster, many of those lifeboats launched half empty. 1,500. Take a second and just let the gravity of that death toll sink in. More than 1,500 people died that night. And what makes it so incredibly grim is that most victims didn't simply drown. They froze to death in the deadly, icy Atlantic water within minutes, all while listening to the soft violin music playing as the giant ship disappeared into the darkness.
Moving into Section 4, comparing the two tragedies, where we'll analyze the anatomy of disaster. Let's put these two famous case studies side by side to begin our direct comparative analysis. Consider the striking juxtaposition here. With the Bermuda Triangle, we are facing invisible dangers and the sheer, unpredictable chaos of nature, which completely fuels our wild human imagination. On the flip side, the RMS Titanic presents highly visible physical danger, combined with immense human arrogance, where technological hubris is tragically punished. Basically, we're looking at an invisible, myth-driven legend pitted against a highly documented, incredibly physical catastrophe.
What is absolutely fascinating to me is exactly why these two completely different tragedies both endure so strongly in our collective memory. The Bermuda Triangle leaves victims missing without a trace. It's rooted in 20th century lore and fueled by wild sci-fi theories. The Titanic, however, left visible, tangible wreckage. It's rooted in 1912 corporate hubris and fatally ignored warnings. One plays heavily on our deep, instinctual fear of the unknown, while the other plays on our terrifying fear of our own deadly mistakes.
Finally, we arrive at Section 5, the enduring lessons and our obsession with the unknown.
So, what do these events ultimately teach us about human nature, our inherent vulnerability, and our deep obsession with what we don't understand? Well, the core lesson we have to take away from this explainer today is this. No matter how advanced our technology becomes, nature is always absolutely stronger. Whether it is through a rapid, unpredictable magnetic storm out in the vastness of the Bermuda Triangle, or a massive, silent iceberg creeping up in the dead of night, the ocean remains entirely unconquerable.
Which leaves us with this final provocative thought to close out our lecture. Are the greatest maritime mysteries simply reminders of our own fragility? We are naturally drawn to the unknown for sure, but perhaps what we're actually drawn to is the humbling realization of our own limits as human beings. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and I will leave you to ponder that question the very next time you look out at the open sea.